Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another exciting Minecraft discussion on this glorious day. Where I am in Vermont, the sun is shining, which is not all that frequent, actually. And it's officially summer here, and the birds are just playing this incredible symphony. I'm just so super excited. So, anyway, my name is Kimberly Quinn, and with me is little Giovanni. He's actually right next to me, hanging out, ready to take a snooze. And what we'd like to talk about today is uh, flow and the genius of routine. And my shout out today goes to Greg McCowan. I've got several books laying around that I'm partway in, probably due to my wiring with being a card carrying fast mind club member. No closure with any of it, but I kind of like, especially in the summer, because it's my schedule a little looser. I really love to just kind of dip into books where I want to. I'm not really a cover to cover type person, unless it's like the Harry Potter series. It's totally different. You're page burning your way all the way through to the end. Like on the edge. These are more, feed your soul kind of readings that just give you, some people call them nuggets, or I don't know, but these aha moments, just feeding the spirit. But I like when you can just dip in and read a chapter and be like, whoa, wow. So I've got a bunch of those books open. So anyway, today we're going to talk about the genius of routine. Oh, wait a minute, though. I feel like I want to share something. I do. I was reading when I was doing my early morning posts on the gram. I found a quote by Ernest Hemingway that says there is no friend as loyal as a book. I love that. There is no friend as loyal as a book. And I know that during the academic year, I'm pretty much immersed in, all things cognitive psychology. And thankfully, because I love what I do, and I have a really good deal at Champlain College, that's for sure, with wonderful people. I can read all this positive psychology stuff, which is what I would do anyway, and it kind of doubles for counting for work, because I feed it right into my classes, and I feed it right into the workshops that I facilitate in clubs for students and also their parents and things like that. And so, but in the summer, I would say, in the summer, there's more flexibility to kind of branch out and try and sort of try some new stuff that I can use as well. So I'm super excited to talk about flow, which comes from the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Again, we're giving Greg McCowan a shout for Essentialism, his book on Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less. I love this guy. And Mihaly I've been using for years. So anyway, Greg starts out with a quote by W.H. Auden, and it says, routine in an intelligent man is a sign of ambition. And interestingly, Greg brings up, I'm going to read you a little bit in just a sec, brings up from his chapter on flow, the genius of routine, brings up Michael Phelps. And before even reading this book, I was already using Michael Phelps in my Minecraft class, two little short clips. I typically show really short things, 3 to 5 minutes. The longest is usually 10, but that's what we can discuss and whatever. But you listen to Michael Phelps being interviewed by his coach, and not interviewed by his coach, sitting next to his coach in an interview, talking about this incredible routine, this mental rehearsal that he does. And I forget if Greg goes into this or not, but I also show one that's similar with Michael Jordan, does the same thing, different sport, just rehearses, rehearses, rehearses. So when the swim meet or the basketball game comes, the brain does not have to exert all this effort, because it has become, this, automatic, thought system, memory actually, which resides in the basal ganglia, someplace that's different from where non-automatic memory resides. But anyway, so Greg starts out saying, for years before the Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps won the gold at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, he followed the same routine at every race. He arrived 2 hours early. He stretched and loosened up according to a precise pattern: 800 mixer, 50 freestyle, 600 kicking with kickboard, 400 pulling a buoy, and more. After the warm up, he would dry off, put in his earphones, and sit, never lie down on the massage table. From that point, he and his coach, Bob Bowman, wouldn't speak a word to each other until after the race was over. So if you go, like I said, I was already onto this thing with Michael Phelps. This just validates and just like is like a review for me that just makes it all that more, deep and meaningful. If you look this up on Google, Michael Phelps routine, at least the one I saw is maybe max 5 minutes. I think more like three. And they're sitting outside a pool at some kind of nice place. I think the beach is in the background. And his coach is kind of having Michael, or the narrator is asking the coach and Michael to talk about this. And Michael gives details about, and he talks about it like a reel. I don't mean Instagram reel, but of course that phrase came from, movie reel. So that's, I think, what he means. He has like this little mental videotape, and then he plays it over and over and over in his head. So Greg continues. He says, at 45 minutes before the race, he would put on his race suit. At 30 minutes, he would get into the warm up pool and do 600 to 800 meters. With 10 minutes to go, he would walk to the ready room. He would find a seat alone, never next to anyone. He liked to keep the seats on both sides of him clear for his things, goggles on one side and his towel on the other. When his race was called, he would walk to the blocks. There he would do what he always did, two stretches, first a straight leg stretch and then with a bent knee, left leg first every time. Then the first earbud would come out. When his name was called, he would take out the left earbud. He would step up to the block, always from the left side. He would dry the block every time. Then he would stand and flap his arms in such a way that his hands hit his back. So, you might think, "Ooh, that sounds so OCD." No, and I'm actually thinking of one baseball player now, that maybe could question that Nomar on the Red Sox a long time ago, and I don't know this. I don't know if he has that diagnosis. I know he did a lot of the same kinda touching things 3 times in the bat and hitting the bat so many times and all that and touching his hat maybe, and I don't know, but I would separate these 2 things because, and maybe that's not true about him, I don't know, just on the outside looking in with the routine, maybe, but maybe not. And so, with this routine, it's different because this is an intentional visual, routine that's meant to, with the intention of becoming so automatic that when the actual swim meet came, that it would be, just happen, which means it takes less effort for the brain when the time comes to shine. It's just so automatic that the brain then has that cognitive reserve or cognitive juice left to do something else. So Michael talks about this, about, it's his routine. It's just routine. And he says, he's had it his whole life and he doesn't intend to change it. And he says it's like watching a videotape. And obviously Greg says that, there's no actual tape, of course. The tape was a visualization of the perfect race. In exquisite detail and slow motion, Phelps would visualize every moment from his starting position on top of the blocks through each stroke until he emerged from the pool victorious with water dripping off his face. So again, if you Google the Michael Jordan one too, Michael Jordan talks it's so similarly to this, only it's just a different sport. He rehearses, practice, rehearse each informal practice as if it were a game, so when the game comes, it's I don't know what other way to say it, but it's kind of like old hat, and then you're on, um, automatic mode, not autopilot in a bad way, like losing life minutes. That's a different that's just like a slacky, lazy way to not be engaged in our lives. That's not what I'm talking about at all. This is an automaticity that has been rehearsed and visualized for optimal performance, and that's what we're talking about here. So in describing Michael Phelps' routine, Greg, says this wasn't like, an occasional thing here or there just before a race. It was every single day. Michael did this visualization routine when he woke up and before he went to bed every single day for years. And it got to the point where his coach Bob Bowman would just barely have to whisper, to Michael, get the videotape ready before a race. And then Michael, was just kind of ready to hit play. And then Greg writes, when asked about the routine, Bowman said if you were to ask Michael what's going on in his head before a competition, he would say he's not really thinking about anything. He's just following the program. But that's not right. It's more like his habits have taken over. When the race arrives, he's more than halfway through his plan. He's been victorious at every step. All the stretches went like he planned. The warm-up laps were just like he visualized. His headphones were playing exactly what he expected. The actual race is just another step in a pattern that started earlier that day and has been nothing but victories. Winning is a natural extension. I just absolutely love this. And from a cognitive, psychological perspective, this is just genius because this is, we've talked about, I was just talking about this yesterday, actually. Oh, I know where. We were recording some podcasts and talking about, the whole purpose of Minecraft and being, how we can often feel in general in life, like the brain takes off on its own like a runaway train, and then learning to become the boss of your brain, which Michael Phelps has apparently mastered. Thoughts come first, feelings second, actions and behaviors first. Learning to sort of lasso that runaway train and get control is teaching somebody to learn how to the engineer teaching the engineer not only to steer the train and navigate the tracks, but also to know the engine, to learn the engine. And this is what's happened here is making a routine so automatic that it shifts into the part of the brain called the basal ganglia. It's a part of the brain, I'm sure most of you have heard the term, just like riding a bike. Okay, that's because, you're probably more than likely most people were young, maybe 4 or 5 or maybe earlier even, but in that range, little kid. And because for most people it was so long ago, you don't really probably have a lot of memory as to, the step by step of that. You might remember a nice memory after you got you were a little wobbly and then somebody gave you a push down a really like a small gentle gradient and gave you a little boost, and then you might have taken a tumble off to the side in the grass something, but you probably don't remember the play by play. And if you haven't been on a bike in 5 years or 10 years or more, if somebody's, you went on a weekend away with somebody you haven't seen in forever and they rented bikes. So you're on Martha's Vineyard. I'm on the East Coast. That's what I'm thinking. Martha's Vineyard and beautiful bike trails by the ocean and everything. You could, if you haven't ridden a bike in 10 years, you could easily get back on it and do it. And that's because it's become part of your implicit memory, which means unconscious, there, as opposed to explicit, which is conscious, and kind of retrieving those autobiographical details of this and that and learning the presidents in third grade or whatever. Implicit memory means it's in the vault. And Michael Phelps and his coach have very strategically, very intentionally worked all of that routine, over from being explicit or conscious to implicit and unconscious. So when it's time for the race, Michael just goes with it and has freed up all of that mental energy to just do other things. It becomes, in a sense, obviously, we don't want to say Olympians effortless, but mentally wise, though, yes, largely so. And then Greg continues, as we all know, Phelps won the record 8 gold medals at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. When visiting Beijing years after Phelps' breathtaking accomplishment, I couldn't help but think about how Phelps and other Olympians make all these feats of amazing athleticism seem so effortless. Of course, Olympic athletes arguably practice longer and train harder than any other athletes in the world. But when they get in that pool or on that track or onto that rink, they make it look positively easy. It's more than just a natural extension of their training. It's a testament to the genius of the right routine. And it's important also to inject, because this is where it comes from, right? Or the person, no, he didn't create it, but discovered it. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, also good friends with Marty Seligman, as far as I know. They look like they got along pretty well. I don't know. Another one who's a pioneer in all things positive psychology. Actually, Marty Seligman, Dr. Martin Seligman was considered the father of positive psychology. And then Mihaly came along with his cognitive flow theory, which I actually used one of the 2 theories of my dissertation. Love this guy. So the whole idea of flow, and this can be with any of us. You don't have to be a famous athlete or Mozart or you know, the Beatles or something, you get in the flow zone. The flow is an altered state of consciousness, not by chemicals or anything like that. It's authentic and it's joy filled and it's the ultimate form of mindfulness when we are locked into the present moment and doing something just for the sake of doing it. It's not about paychecks, it's not about for anything external. We are locked into it. There might be a paycheck attached, but that's not our motive. I watch leaving issues aside, like when I watch the old Jackson 5 tapes, because I love their music. You watch young Michael at like, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old flying around that stage. Even though they got paid, he's not thinking about that. He's flying around the stage, just a natural. That's the flow zone, the flow or Michael Phelps, or you watch I was watching I forgot his name, this young genius child pianist. I think he looked like he was in kindergarten. Let's just say he's 6 or 7 at the most. 'Cause his feet didn't even touch the ground when he's sitting on the piano bench, and he's just playing these beautiful, a Bach or Beethoven or something. When you watch any of these, this natural talent and they're in this flow zone, at that moment, they're at one with the piano, they're at one with the pool, they're at one with the stage, they're at one with the guitar, they're at one writing. Think of all the famous authors, it just flows out of them. And this is what flow is. It's when you're doing it for the sake of it and you lose sense of time. All of a sudden, like let's say your thing is playing the guitar in your garage with a band, and you start out it's noon and you come out of the garage and it's dark. You're like, where'd that time? Oh my God, I didn't even eat. I think I have to pee. I forgot. That's the flow zone. You don't need to be famous to do it. I'm in the flow. I would say I would only the only reason I'm not saying every day is because that would imply, 100%, which doesn't exist in life, right? I would say nearly every day of my life, I'm in the flow zone teaching and educating because that crosses over into doing workshops and presentations because it's all educating. And I have to look at the clock. Champlain's a clockless campus, and I have to keep every once in a while I have to look at the bottom right corner of the computer on the desk to make sure because otherwise I will keep them till midnight. I get so excited. So when we're in that state of flow, like Michael Phelps is and Michael Jordan is, and again, Nadia Comaneci, the gymnast from way back in the set, those are all Olympians. I don't mean that to be my only example. Anybody else on stage and writing and whatever, and it doesn't have to be any of those things either. Regular people like us can be in the flow zone doing what you do best. But it's not just regular pleasure or regular happiness. It's more elevated than that because you're actually in an altered state where you lose sense of time and also sense of self because again, you're at one with teaching. You're at one with whatever's running, you're at one with whatever, and so this is what we're talking about. So Michael Phelps, is absolutely in that, and you add the routine into it, and, it's no big surprise he won 8 gold medals in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. So then back to Greg explains, so remember there's essentialism versus non-essentialism. It's polar, and obviously, since life doesn't land on, polar life is not polarized, let's say that. We can land on anywhere on the spectrum, right? From, let's say, non-essentialism is on the far left and essentialism is on the far right, and there's all the whole middle. I am definitely an essentialist in training. I'm a grasshopper with my white belt and maybe one blue stripe, but I am committed. And so Greg describes it. It says, the way of the non-essentialist is to think the essentials only get done when they are forced, that execution is a matter of raw effort alone. You labor to make it happen. You push through. The way of the essentialist is different. The essentialist designs a routine that makes achieving what you have identified as essential as essentially the default position. Let's say that over again. The way of the essential is different. The essentialist designs a routine that makes achieving what you have designed as identified as essential the default position. Yes, in some instances, an essentialist still has to work hard, but with the right routine in place, each effort yields exponentially greater results. And I have to tell you, I'm pretty excited to jump back into because I bought them both at the same time. Greg McGowan's next book is called Effortless. I forget the rest of the whole sentence, but effortless. And it's interesting because the universe just seems to send me what I need to hear because all these podcasts are saying, "Oh, you're efforting again. You're efforting again." That isn't the way to go. We're not saying be slackers. We're gonna get to it. Just hold tight there. So then Greg Greg again talks about making it look easy. And he says routine is one of the most powerful tools for removing obstacles. Without routine, the pull of non essential distractions will overpower us. But if we create a routine that enshrines the essentials, we will begin to execute them on autopilot. This is what we're talking about. There's bad autopilot, which is just, being out in the world, living your life. I'm looking around at this phenomenal day. I mean, every day is a gift, but this is a bluebird and the birds are chirping and it's little breeze and it's just so great out. Do we want to toss that out to not being engaged with our life? I don't think so. So that's bad autopilot. This really the word should be flow rather than autopilot. But and routine, flow and a good routine. So he continues to talk about, he says, instead of our consciously pursuing the essential, it will happen out of our having to think about it. We won't have to expend precious energy every day prioritizing everything. Remember that the essentialist doesn't prioritize everything. In fact, earlier in Greg's book, I think it's somewhere in the beginning, he talks about, way back in the 1400s, up until relatively recently, the word priority was only singular. There was only one essential thing. What is your priority? As in, there is only one. And then now, currently, your company's saying, priorities and pri one, pri two, pri three. Well, the essentialist doesn't believe in that. There might be even other good opportunities, but we sacrifice the good opportunities to hone in on that one great one. We work at becoming great at what we're already good at. So, Greg has it right here. It's a great way for us to sign off. I just loved having this whole conversation. It's just so good. I'm loving this book. I can't wait to jump back into his next one. I kind of dabbled a bit because I was kind of curious. But then I kind of, the group I'm in with the masterminds, they're super fans of both of these, but I wanted to do first things first, and I believe this is the first one. So Greg says, we must simply expend a small amount of initial energy to create the routine, and then all that is left to do is follow it. Awesome. So again, big shout out to Greg McKeown. His book is Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off on this bluebird day from the beautiful northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.